Well, the EU and the US now have a trade deal, as we can see, but most European exports are going to face a 15% tariff in the United States. And joining us from Berlin with more on the agreement and how it is being received is the Deutsche Welle correspondent Chipondo Chimbelu. Chipondo, what can you tell us about the details of the tariff deal?
Thanks for having me. Well, this deal does end a months-long transatlantic trade standoff. European exports, of course, will now face 50% tariffs, so the EU will be able to avoid higher tariffs of 30% on all EU goods, which US President Trump had threatened at the end of May. Now, for most European exports, tariffs will rise by 5% from the 10% reciprocal tariffs that have been in place since April. But cars and car parts which have been facing higher tariffs of 25%, will now have lower tariffs. And that is some good news for the auto industry because they at least won't be facing higher tariffs. Now, steel and aluminum, on the other hand, will continue to face the 50% tariff rate. Pharmaceuticals are excluded from the tariff deal, but the trade deal, of course, is not quite done and dusted because all EU member states will need to approve it.
Well, Chipondo, also, let's take a look at the bigger picture. How will, the deal affect the European economy?
The deal does bring back some stability to the markets. That is perhaps why one German newspaper called it damage control. But the damage will still be there. For most sectors, tariffs are higher, and that means that overall trade between the world's two largest trade partners will be more expensive. And that isn't good news for people on both ends of the Atlantic. And it is also, of course, worth considering that American exports to the EU face zero tariffs. Now, overall, the European Union doesn't come out looking like a winner. Many are also pointing to the UK, which they say was able to get a better deal. Westminster was able to negotiate a deal that kept the 10% reciprocal tariffs in place. So that is, of course, 5 percentage points lower than the tariff rate on European exports. That is also why many people do believe that the EU did get a short end of the deal. And now, of course, we'll have to wait to see whether the EU member states will approve this trade deal.
Chipunda, thank you very much for being with us.